Before I get into the latest Hollywood mythology fight, I want to be very clear about what this video is and what it is not. This is not a video about whether Lupita Nyong'o can act, because she can. This is not even really a video about whether Christopher Nolan can cast whoever he wants in the Odyssey. He can, it's his movie. This video is about something much more specific. Sonny Hostin went on The View and made a historical claim. She said people who object to Helen of Troy being played by a black actress don't know history. Okay, well, let's check the history. Because the moment you say you don't know history, you're no longer just defending a casting choice, you're opening the receipts drawer. And unfortunately for The View, some of those receipts are about 2,800 years old. Welcome back to The Critical Nerd, where we keep our expectations low and our receipts high and our daytime television history lessons somewhere above the 8th grade worksheet level. If you're returning, thank you and welcome back. And if you're new here, this is what we do. We take the narrative, we take the spin, we take the smug little, actually, you just don't understand history lecture, and then we check the sources. So here's what happened. Christopher Nolan's upcoming adaptation of the Odyssey has become one of the biggest movie discourse magnets of the year. Nolan is directing, the cast is massive, the mythology is legendary, and Lupita Nyong'o has reportedly, well, it's been confirmed now, been cast as Helen of Troy and Clytemnestra. Naturally, people reacted. Some defended it as artistic license. Some criticized it as another Hollywood race swap of a traditionally European mythological figure. And then Sonny Hostin on The View this past Thursday stepped in with this.
It's an easy solution, but I think, racism rears its ugly head often on, and more often now than ever, I think, in our country. But if you are a student of history, you know that scholars have debated for decades the extent to which Greek mythology and civilization were influenced by ancient Egypt and North Africa. It is very clear that Andromeda is described as an Ethiopian princess. We have Othello, the Moor. The Greeks, this idea was also explored in a book called Black Athena. I think people should read it, which argues that classical Greek culture is heavily indebted to Afro-Asiatic and Near Eastern roots. I actually taught Greek mythology to 8th graders. And so I covered this.
Fun fact.
So people that are saying that Helen of Troy could not possibly be played by a black woman don't know history.
But what is it?
And there it is. That is the target. Not Lupita, not even Nolan. The target is the claim. Sonny Hostin did not just say, I like the casting. She did not just say, myths can be reinterpreted. She did not just say, Nolan is allowed to make an artistic choice. All of those would have been arguments. But that's not where she stopped. She invoked Black Athena, brought up teaching Greek mythology to 8th graders, and then said people who disagree don't know history. That changes the conversation, because now we are not debating whether an actress is talented. We are now debating whether the historical and literary record backs up what she said. And this is where Hollywood defenders constantly make their own lives harder. They could simply say, this is a modern artistic reinterpretation. Fine, it's an honest argument. They could say, Nolan wanted Lupita because she is a great actress. That's also fine. But instead, they keep doing this thing where every modern casting choice suddenly gets retrofitted into history. And if you question it, somehow you're the one who failed social studies. So now let's go to the primary source. Let's go to Homer. You know, the guy whose work all this is supposedly built on. In the Iliad, Helen is described with a repeated Greek epithet. I'm going to put it on the screen because I can't pronounce it. Now, it's commonly translated as white-armed Helen. Now, let's be careful here because this is where people online love to lose their minds on purpose. I'm not saying Homer was using modern American racial categories. He was not filling out a casting breakdown for Universal Pictures in 2026. And Helen is a mythological figure, We do not have her passport photo. We do not have her 23andMe results. We do not have a Bronze Age LinkedIn profile saying, Helen of Troy, the face that launched 1,000 ships, opened for work. But if someone wants to say that history backs them up, then the original text matters. And the original Greek does not help Sonny Hostin's argument. It says white-armed Helen. That does not mean every adaptation must be a documentary. It does not mean Nolan is forbidden from making an artistic choice. But it absolutely means you cannot smugly go on national television and say people who question the casting don't know history, when the most obvious ancient receipt points in the opposite direction. That there's the problem, not the casting, the lecture. Because if you're going to accuse the audience of not knowing history, step one should probably be checking the history. I know it's a radical idea, dangerous concept. Might even require opening a book that was not handed out during the 8th period. Now let's talk about Black Athena, because that was the book Sonny Hostin cited. Martin Bernal's Black Athena argued that ancient Greek civilization owed much more to Egyptian and Near Eastern influence than traditional classical scholarship admitted. And to be fair, there is a real conversation to be had about cultural influence in ancient Mediterranean. Civilizations interacted, they traded, they borrowed, they influenced each other. Nobody serious thinks ancient Greece developed inside a magical marble snow globe with Zeus standing at the border yelling, "No imports!" Egypt mattered. The Near East mattered. The Mediterranean was connected. But that is not the same thing as saying Black Athena settled the Helen of Troy debate. It did not. Black Athena was controversial when it came out, and it was heavily challenged by classicists, historians, linguists, and archaeologists. Mary Lefkowitz, not out of Africa, directly pushed back on many of Bernal's claims. Black Athena Revisited gathered scholars responding to and criticizing the theory. And this is the important part. This was not just some white-wing backlash. These were classicists and historians saying, hold on, the evidence does not support this. So when Hostin says, read Black Athena, the answer is, okay. But also read the scholars who responded to Black Athena. Read the primary sources, read the criticism, read Homer. Because citing one controversial book from the 1980s as if it ends the conversation is not scholarship. That is a bibliography being used as a force field, and it does not work. There's also a modern evidence problem. A major 2017 ancient DNA study on Minoan and Mycenaean, I think I got that right, populations found that these groups were largely connected to Aegean and Western Anatolian Neolithic ancestry, with additional ancestry related to religions like the Caucasus, I mispronounced that, Iran, and some steppe-related input into the Mycenaeans. I want to put this in plain English. Ancient Greek populations were part of a connected Eastern Mediterranean world. There was a mixture. There was a movement. There was influence. But the evidence does not support the lazy, viral cable news version of Greek civilization was basically African, therefore Helen of Troy being black is historically backed. That is not what the evidence says. And again, this does not mean Nolan cannot cast Lupita. It does not mean mythology cannot be reimagined. It does not mean every film must look like a museum exhibit. But it does mean that if you're going to claim history supports your argument, the evidence has to actually support your argument. You cannot flatten ancient history into modern identity politics and then accuse everyone else of being ignorant. That is not education. That is narrative laundering. Now I have to address one of the funniest parts of the clip. Sonny Hostin says she taught Greek mythology to 8th graders. Look, respect the teachers. Teaching middle school is not for the weak. Middle schoolers are basically tiny chaos goblins with backpacks and unlimited opinions. So if you taught Greek mythology to 8th graders, congratulations, you survived something Homer himself would have called an epic trial. But teaching the 8th grade mythology unit is not the same thing as being a classicist. It's not the same thing as being an ancient historian. It's not the same thing as being an archaeologist. It's not the same thing as reading ancient Greek primary texts for a living. I once taught someone how to reset a printer. That does not make me Gutenberg. And the reason this matters is because the credential part of the performance, I taught this, I covered this. People who disagree don't know history. That is designed to shut the argument down. But it should actually open the argument up. Because the moment you claim authority, people are allowed to check that authority. And when we check it, the argument starts falling apart. The primary source does not help her. The scholarly debate around Black Athena does not help her the way she thinks it does. The modern genetic evidence does not support the simplified viral claim. So what are we left with? A casting choice being defended with a historical argument that cannot carry the weight placed on it. Here's the thing. Hollywood defenders would have a much easier time if they just told the truth. Just say, Christopher Nolan is making an artistic adaptation. That's fine. Say Lupita is a great actress and Nolan wanted her in the film. That's fine. Say myths get reinterpreted for modern audiences. It's also fine. I may agree or disagree depending on the project, but at least that is an honest argument. What people are tired of is the second move. The move where a studio or media panel supports a modern creative choice, then pretends the source material always secretly supported it. And anyone who noticed the change is just ignorant. That is where audiences check out. Because people know the difference between we changed this and you're wrong for remembering what it was. Those are not the same thing. And if Hollywood wants to reinterpret mythology, fine. Just stop pretending the audience failed history class because they noticed the reinterpretation. So here's the final verdict. Christopher Nolan, he can cast whoever he wants. Lupita Nyong'o, she's a talented actress. Helen of Troy is a mythological figure. Artistic license exists. All true. But Sonny Hostin did not merely say, I support the casting. She said people who object don't know history. That is a different claim. And once you say that, Homer gets to enter the chat. The Greek text gets to enter the chat. The scholarship gets to enter the chat. The receipts get to enter the chat. And those receipts are not kind. So let me know what you think. Is this just artistic license? Is this another case of Hollywood changing the source material and then pretending the audience is the problem? Or is the View now our trusted source for ancient Greek scholarship? Because if so, I'm going to need a much bigger red pen. Do me a favor, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share this out there with your friends and family who think teaching 8th grade mythology means you've defeated Homer. Until next time, keep your expectations low and your receipts high. I'm the Critical Nerd, and I'm out.